Welcome to Level Up Tribes. Level Up Tribes provides resources to help you attain the necessary resources to level up your mind, body, and soul and realize your full potential. It is about exploring, learning, providing you with the tools from the experts for you to create a better version of yourself. I am your host, Agnes Goodwine, and welcome, Tribes. So thank you, Paula Harris, for being at Level Up Tribes podcast. I'm excited to have you here with us today to talk about everything finance, especially now. Are we in a recession? I guess that's the question.
We are in a recession, unfortunately, Agnes, but I'm thrilled to be here to talk to you today.
Well, thank you. So Paula Harris is the co-founder at WH Cornerstone Investments. She is part financial advisor and part dream architect who takes pride in helping her clients, particularly widowed women, obtain financial peace of mind while they get back on their feet, rise up, and navigate their path forward. Paula is an engaging speaker and author of Rise Up, a Widow's Journal, available on Amazon. She enjoys assisting people in the life planning that goes hand in hand with financial planning and is the creator of Rise Up Success Training and Retreats. She has studied with Jack Canfield and is certified in the success principles and methodology. She can be reached at whcornerstone.com. She also has other passion projects. She also hosts a Wisdom Wednesday on YouTube, which we'll talk about later on the show. So again, welcome. I'm super excited to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Before we dive deep into the whole finance and what's happening in the world right now, I want to dive into your story and the reason why financial planning is your thing, and how did your business start? And your husband, right? Yes.
Yes, I have the privilege of working with my husband. And the firm started in the 90s while I still had a corporate job, and he was in the firm alone. I was working for consulting firms first, and then credit card companies. And I did a lot of campus recruiting, college recruiting from highly competitive MBA schools, as well as human resources. And it came to a crossroads in the early 2000s. And he said, why don't you come work with me? So many of our clients are females, and I think you would be a great addition to it. So I brought in my people skills, the human resource skills, to marry with his financial skills. And we've been working together now 20 years, and which has been really exciting. So the firm's like 26 or 7 years old, and we brought on our first certified financial planner outside of the family this spring. So it's been very exciting to sort of watch the business flourish and grow over these years.
Yes, that's amazing that you can be business partner and still married, right?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely learn a lot of things about yourself, and working together in patience and trying to keep things separated. But we don't have kids, so we do talk about work probably more than we should.
I love it. So I wanted to ask you, finances are the key to each of our lives. And in order to level up over our lives, what action do we need to take about our finances now more than past generations, right? Like we spoke about, like we're just getting through a pandemic, where, the war in Ukraine, just everything that's happening now, like help us.
Yeah. So I think one of the things I find so often is people put their head in the sands around finances. They don't want to talk about it. They want to avoid it. We long ago lost delayed gratification in our lives. I kind of equate it to, there used to be layaway, like you could buy something and pay for it over so many months. Credit cards became more popular, but kind of did away with layaway, which you would say, oh, I'll buy this for Christmas. Or you would wait and say, I want this on my birthday list, my Christmas list. And now everyone's like, Amazon can deliver it to me in 4 hours or 4 days. And they like, just give it to me now. And with that comes a lot of, I'll say, other consequences when we don't focus on the long picture. I mean, there's a balance between living life today and having the long view, because retirement is going to be very long and it's going to be very expensive. The good news is we're living much longer, and now they say insurance tables are actually planning out to 120. Oh. So a lot of people will come in and say like, oh, I'm not living past 80. Well, you don't know that. So you've got to plan for the long term. So I think the first step is you have to be a willing participant in your finances. That means you have to, sit down a couple of times a year and say, okay, where am I? What do I have? What do I owe? And what do I have left? And too many people go into retirement with hardly anything saved. I talked to a woman earlier this week in her early 70s. She's divorced. She has no savings. She has a house that isn't paid off yet. She's still working, and she has Social Security and this job, but she wants to cut back on the hours she works. It's going to be very, very hard. I mean, there is no savings. So you've got to wake up and look at things and come from a place of knowledge, not fear or ignorance, because, the more you keep putting it off, the bigger the hole gets. So you want to make sure that you're getting ahead of things and looking out to the future. So that's just the overview. We can go into more specifics if you want.
First, I want to ask you, like, who are your clients, right? And also, do you see with meeting with your clients, like different types of mindset depending on the age group?
Interesting. I wouldn't say that there's a different mindset, depending on the age group, but there are definitely different mindsets. Some people come from fear, and they're so fearful that they want to hold on to everything. I mean, I've seen people who've got multiple millions of dollars and they live in such fear they're going to lose it all, that they're just like kind of torn up inside, especially as the market has been so up and down as of late. They're the ones that call all the time a little bit more panicky. I've seen people who have very little be very calm, and say, like, you know what, I grew up with nothing and this is more than I've ever had. So I trust that I will be fine. And I will say I've seen 85, I've got a client who's in her late 80s, and she's still been traveling. She was skiing fairly recently, but she just moved across the country. She's going to see the Northern Lights. She's just come back from Europe, like doing great things. I've got a 91-year-old client, and he's delivering Meals on Wheels and still playing tennis. So I think that there's something to be said that, you have to live your life to its fullest at any age that you're at. And I mean, I'm sure you've seen people at young ages and that aren't living. People get paralyzed with that fear or indecision, and that's hard.
To go back to financing, like, it's really hard topic to talk about. I know sometimes it's hard for me to talk about that with my husband, right? Because as you stated before, it's, sometimes you're embarrassed or you have a fear. What's like, some tips that you can give us in regards to taking that first step if you have a fear-based mentality in regards to your mindset, to just take that leap of faith and call you as a financial advisor and say, what do I need to do?
Yeah. So I think there's a couple of natural times of the year that I think we think about money a little bit more. January 1, new year, new you, like let's make a commitment to talk about finances, and you just say, hey, can we have a date night or something, so we can talk about it and make it fun. If you need to eat dinner at a different room in your house to have fun, great. If you can go out, go out and do it, and make it a little bit more celebratory than, like I'm under the microscope. The other great times are, when you're doing your taxes, because you really have to pull all of your statements, your check stubs, your retirement, your investments, you got to pull that all out. So that's a great time. People are often motivated around their birthday. Again, it's sort of like a new year, new you. And then I always think about the fall. So I think we're always programmed for our whole life to the back to school kind of mentality fall brings. So it's just saying, I'd like to talk about it. And if you're the person who your spouse is always saying, hey, I want to talk about it, and you're the one going like, no, I have my fingers in my ears, don't talk to me. I have a lot of friends like that. And then they joke that they say, if the credit card works, like, just leave me alone. But you then need to say, look, my spouse wants to talk to me. I need to make myself available and be present, and realize you usually feel so much better afterwards. And it's not, if you come at it with like, we're not judging each other, we're just going to make sure that our financial future, our future together, is stronger because we've had some conversations about what do we want? How do we want to live our future years? Not even all the way to retirement, but like, do we want to live somewhere else? We were talking about living in different parts of the country. Maybe you don't want to stay where you are. Maybe you want to move somewhere else, and you want to do that while you're still working rather than in retirement. Maybe you want a different house. Maybe, you want a bigger family, like whatever the things are, it helps to talk about it. And there's tools, you can find lots of tools on the internet, but I think things around your mindset and kind of coaching related tools, I think, are helpful. And then I think finding a financial advisor, there's a couple of, it can be a little overwhelming because there's so many people that call themselves financial advisors, financial planners, and people do different things. If someone is just asking you about your finances because they want to sell you a product, that's not really, that's not pure financial advice. That's just trying to get you to buy a product. So you want to be kind of careful of that. So, looking for someone who's a certified financial planner, someone who is a fee-only planner, so that basically you pay them a fee to get advice back. And I think that's really important to think about that. And most people will give you 30 minutes, 45 minutes, maybe up to an hour, complimentary, to hear what's going on, to see if they can add value to your situation. So getting some referrals from some friends, some family, but also looking online, the CFP board has a website where you can find a certified financial planner. And there's a group called NAPFA, National Association of Personal Financial Advisors. They have a website that you can look at. There are some other groups, the XY Planning Network. They help people who are Generation X and Y, typically, look for financial advice, for a fee. And I think starting in those places are helpful.
I am so glad that you mentioned that, because that was going to be one of my questions about like certification when you're trying to find someone to manage your money, right?
Yep.
That's super important. I remember years ago, I used to work for the security commissioner's office. In Wilmington, Delaware, and the attorneys, it was under the Attorney General's office, but all the scams, right, that was coming through. So our division would investigate that. And so that was going to be one of my questions is like, okay, do they need to be certified? Because that's so important. So for those that don't know what the definition really is about financial planning, can you dive deep into that?
Sure. So there's definitely, like the way we break it down, we manage money, but we also offer financial planning. So you don't have to have any money. You just have to be able to pay the fee on the financial plan to talk about your finances. So people often lump the two together and they think, I have no money, I can't talk to anyone. So that is not true. You don't have to have an investment portfolio in order to talk to a financial advisor. So what a financial advisor will do, a financial planner, is like we're doing a project right now for some folks. So they are a married couple and they're starting to think about when they want to retire. So what we're starting with is the basics. Okay, let's figure out what's your cash flow. What's coming in, what's going out? What are your assets? What do you own? Do you have any debts on any of that? We use, in our company, we use some tools. We use one called the Colbier Index, which is a tool to measure the cognitive part of the mind. So when you're free to be yourself, how do you like to act? So we want to know, how do we deliver information in the best way that the clients are going to receive it so that their plan is most successful? And that tool helps us. So we dive a little bit more in there. We look at people's paycheck and we say, okay, you're making $250,000. We tend to work with more high net worth people. But when you actually, after all your deductions and your taxes, you're only bringing home $118,000. And it's like, what? And you think you're making a big number, but getting that reality check, because we often will spend to what that first number is, not thinking about the deductions and all the taxes. Then we're going to look at, okay, under the umbrella of risk, what insurances do you have? Do you have too much insurance? Do you have too little insurance? Do you have an umbrella policy? Do you have a need for life insurance? Do you have a need for long-term care insurance? Do you have a need for long-term disability? Long-term disability is often more important than short-term disability, because for 90 days, you should have an emergency fund that would cover anything for 90 days. It's the longer haul. So we're going to look at that. We're going to look at someone's investments. Okay, we're going to figure out what their risk tolerance is. Like right now, as the market's up and down, like, oh, how are you doing with a ride that's like a roller coaster? If you can't handle it, then you're going to make sure that your investments are much more less volatile and much safer. So you're going to probably sacrifice some growth for that. But we're going to talk about it. We're going to look at it. We're going to say, okay, do you know what the expenses are that you're paying in your current investments? And then we're going to make sure, also on the risk side, do you have an estate plan in place? Wills, trusts, healthcare proxies, power of attorney, very important things to have in place. We're going to talk about small things you can do. You want to make sure it's a big thing, naming your beneficiaries and making sure they're updated. Something you can do without an attorney. You can do that in your workplace, on your insurance policies. Having something like something called the File of Life card. It's a little red card. It says FOL.org. And it has all of your medical information, any medications you're taking, your name, your doctor's name. So if something happens and an EMT has to find you, they pull this up. You'll have it in your house, in your wallet, and they know what to do. So like we're looking at all the ways we can help you with risk and protect you so that you're buttoned up and you start thinking about what it is that you want to do. So that's some of it. We're also talking, okay, let's prioritize your goals. And then we're going to see, how do we fund those goals? And then we also use something, come up with like a personal statement, your guiding principle, so that, values, lining up your values with your spending is a big deal. And if you've got two different people with different values, you're going to have a hard time with that. So I know I just gave a lot of information at once. So if you want me to unpack anything.
It was great information. One thing that stood out was
Yes.
You mentioned something about, do you have too much insurance?
Too much insurance.
I
Yep.
never heard that. So what do you mean by that?
So sometimes people will have, let's just say your to cover everything would be like $1 million, but you carry $3 million in life insurance. Or here's an example. We have a widow. She was widowed in her 50s. Her house is paid off and her kids are all grown up and living on their own. But she was carrying a whole life policy that she was paying $20,000 a year for.
Wow.
And it was a $500,000 policy. So when she died, that $500,000, $500,000 would go to her kids. But her kids are now adults and her house is paid for. So her need for life insurance is not very great at that point. So she was overinsured in that. If she had a term insurance policy, it might be different, which you would pay maybe, a couple $1,000s for it. But to take $20,000 every year, that's a lot of money.
It is.
And it was not a policy that she needed. And, after explaining it to her, she understood that and she let it go. But that's where an example, you might be overinsured, or you might carry more car insurance. You might have an old beat up car, but you have like super high amounts on your auto insurance. And you know what? The car's not worth that much. You could probably dial it back. So you look at all of those types of things.
Okay. Can you explain the differences between a will and a trust?
So a will is a letter to the probate court that says, these are the things I want to have happen with my estate, with my property, with my, all the property inside your house, from like your grandfather clock to your computer. And then it goes through the courts and there'll be the notification put in the paper, the estate of Paula Harris. If anybody has a claim to it, this is when you can come forward. Now, a trust does a lot of that same thing, but it's all private. And different states have some different laws on that, but where we are in Massachusetts, the trust is a better way to go if you want to keep things private. So you have to, you'll have to pay the money more up front to set the trust up. And there may be there still will be a will within a trust, but it's what's called a pour over. So it basically says anything I didn't account for, pick it up and drop it into the trust. Whereas the will be very public. I've seen there are people out there called forensic genealogists. So they look through the newspapers and they say, oh, I just saw that a single person died and they had no children. So they go after the estate and they try to find any heirs. We had this happen in our family. So it was a cousin of my father's. She was an only child, never married, never had kids. And when she died, they found all these cousins that didn't know they were related to her. And when her estate went through the probate court, they were 3 people that were unknown to everyone got discovered, and they got a share of her inheritance, or her estate.
Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I think the forensic genealogists keep 50% of what they find for you. So it's one of those, it can cause a lot of issues not to have things sort of buttoned up. And also during COVID, if you had to go through the probate courts, it was taking about a year and a half, long period of time. So if you don't have access, so a lot of times people will have an account only in their name and their spouse can't get access if it wasn't in a trust, and like they have to wait for the probate court to say, yes, now this account is yours. It can be very ugly and cumbersome. And if there's no documents at all, it's just really, really hard.
Oh my God. But that's something that you talk about with your clients.
Yes,
Oh,
absolutely.
wow.
Absolutely. And the more you own, the more important it is. I mean, if you can do a lot of estate planning with your beneficiaries and making sure they're updated. But the other thing is making sure you have that healthcare proxy. That was really important, especially during COVID, when a husband and wife might go to the hospital together, but only one of them goes in and the other that can't go in. Well, you have to call and the doctor has to have permission to talk to you. If it's not in writing, they won't talk to you.
Yes, that's true.
Even parents are finding this out when their kids go off to college. Kids have to have them because the parent can no longer talk to the kid's doctor at 18.
I actually just told my son that my youngest is moving to Korea for an
Ah,
assignment for a few years. And I'm like, can you please,
yes,
add me to everything, especially like emergency contacts, anything,
yes,
because I need to know.
right. Very important, especially when he's going to be halfway around the world. And when we don't, especially when we're younger, we don't think about those things. We think about it more when we're older, but it's important at any age.
Yes, absolutely. I want to go back. So back to the generations. So for my podcast listeners are between the age, most of them, the majority, 35 and 55.
Okay.
Okay. So, but for those that are between 20 and 30, right? Like what kind of advice can you give to the people from 30 to 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50?
Okay. So the 20 somethings, oh my gosh, this is the time. If you can open a Roth IRA and start funding it, do it. Start it even when if you have kids that are in their teens and 20s, if you've got younger siblings, you have that summer job and you have W-2 income, you can put away up to, I think, $6,000. So you can put $5 away or you can put up to the max, but you want to start doing that because the power of compounding is huge. That money ideally is going to, you're putting it in, it's after tax, it's going to grow tax free, and it's going to come out tax free. So the power of compounding for 40 years, that money is huge. There's studies, I think if you start putting money in for like 10 years from 20 to 30, and then you stop, and then you're someone else who starts at 30 and does it the rest of your working life, you will never catch up to that person that did it from 20 to 30. So power of compounding, huge. Take advantage of the any of the retirement savings plans you might have at work, 403Bs, 401Ks, 457s. Participate, even if there's not a match. Participate. You're gonna, most of the times it will be going into a regular 401k, but you can also put money into the Roth 401k and you won't get a deduction, but very well worth it. So that's what I'd say there. When you start hitting your 30s, I think my generation's a little different than the people now. 30s, people have delayed a lot of their life actions. Like I owned a house at 26. I was married at 28. I think people are delaying some of that. So your 30s might still look a little more like your early 30s, like your 20s. But you want to make sure you all ages, you're looking at your finance. You look at what are you paying in subscription costs? And I think that's a big one for the younger generations. Everything is a subscription, Netflix, Hulu, your gym, your music, like just everything in life is a subscription. I mean, you can get snacks sent to you on a subscription. Every time I go to Amazon, they're like, don't you want to sign up for a monthly to have your supplements sent to you? So we forget about those things, but that adds up if you're not paying attention. And I think at this point too, you want to be continuing to turn up the savings volume more and more. So, each year you really should consider putting another % in. You should do that in your 20s too. And you want to start, really being smart about, where are you working? Are you working where you can get the great benefits? Sometimes people will stay at a job just out of laziness. It's convenient, but they're not, we have a family member, she's hostessing while she goes to college. We're like, she has a dream of being an airline stewardess. Like right now, they are desperate for airline stewardesses. You could still go to college part-time and be an airline stewardess. So,
oh, wow.
Go do it. Yeah, go think about it. I have a friend who in her 40s went to become an airline stewardess. So you can still make changes in your life. And then so in your 30s too, as you start to develop families, you want to make sure, are you properly insured? If you've got those financial obligations of a house and a family, do you have life insurance that would take care of your family if you're not there? it is really difficult, since we work with widows, when there is a situation where there wasn't enough savings. We've talked to too many people, and it's really ugly to have to think about, getting out of your house, uprooting your whole life after you've lost a spouse. It's awful. So being properly insured is important. And your 40s, late 30s, 40s, if you've got kids, you've got to be looking to save for their college. You got to have all these little buckets of savings, the 529 plans. You want to make sure you're saving in a brokerage account too. It's great to be saving in these retirement accounts, but you want to make sure you're saving outside of retirement accounts as well, because the 401ks, the IRAs, all have taxes to be paid when the money comes out. So it goes in tax deferred, grows tax deferred, but is taxed when it comes out. So if let's just say you saved $1 million, it's retirement time, you probably would owe 25 to 30% every time you took out. Like if you need to take out 100,000, you have to take out 125, 130,000 to cover your base expense. So that money is going to draw down faster. But if you have money in the Roth IRA, that money will come out tax-free. So that's a good thing. And then having money in a brokerage account and saving there. So let the stock market, I know it's down right now. People should be thinking it's on sale. It's very uncomfortable for people to think, oh my gosh, it's down, it's in trouble. But this is like a sale. Like if you were to go to Target right now and you saw everything slash 30%, you'd be like, woohoo, like I'm going to stock up. That's how people should be thinking in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s right now, 60s. I mean, we've got clients 70s, 80s putting more money in, which is great. We have a lot of people putting money in right now, which is, it's counterintuitive, but it's the right thing to be doing. And then you're like, I'd say early to mid 50s, you want to start, are you on track? Like this is really important time to talk to an advisor. Am I on track to meet the goals I want? Full retirement age for people is, 67 for the most part at this point. So people often say, oh, I'm going to retire at 60, 62. Where are you going to get your health insurance? You can't get on Medicare until 65. So you got to think about that. So how, you could save a bucket of money and do it that way. You're going to start thinking about retirement. What does retirement look like? Are you retiring from something or retiring to something? Because if you're only retiring from something, you are not going to have a happy retirement. Like the number of people that say, oh, just I can't wait to get out of here. This stinks. I hate my job. I work for the man. They are not necessarily going to have a good long retirement because if they're not focused on what they're going to, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to go teach karate at the local senior center. I'm going to go volunteer with kids. I'm going to do Meals on Wheels. I'm going to volunteer more with my church. You've got a higher purpose to get out of bed every day. And you will have a much happier, fulfilling lifelong retirement, which is great. So again, I just dumped a whole bunch of information.
No, thank God it's recorded, right? Because you can always rewind.
That's right. That's right.
I love it. You gave us golden nuggets. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask you about the health is wealth.
Yes.
And can you tell us more about it?
So, with us living longer, that's awesome. But that gives us more chance for more things to happen in our lives. Our bodies do change and break down. So having your health is probably the most important thing when you think about as you go into aging and go into retirement. Because if you don't have your health, we're talking to some 90-year-old clients. So like our best friends now are doctors or medical professionals. That's who we see every day, but it's very expensive to be aging or to have illness. I have a friend who's going through breast cancer right now, and she's having infusions, and she shared with me, which blew me away. The bill for her first infusion was $42,000. $42,000. So she has insurance, and insurance will cover most of that, but she's got to do this 6 times. And she's in her 50s. That is very expensive. So if you start to see more of this in compounds and you're spending this much money on your health, you literally will lose your wealth. So to have a healthy body, healthy mind will allow you to, keep your wealth more, and your health is everything. And so really, when we go into retirement, there's something called the retirement smile. And we start off spending, they used to say, well, you'd spend 80% less than when money that you were working, but you tend to spend more because we're healthier, we're younger, we're healthier. And so we're going golfing, we're going out to dinner 5 days, 6 days a week, we're going with friends. But then you get in, those are your go-go years. So you're up here, and then you go your slow-go years, and it starts dropping down. You kind of done your bucket list. The street lights come on, and you don't want to drive anymore at night. So that cuts out go doing that type of stuff. But then as you age again, you go into your no-go years, but the spending goes up, and it's all healthcare related. So it's really making sure that we're eating healthy now. Try to eat as organic as you can. Stay away from food that comes from a bag, a box, a window, a cellophane, something that you microwave. These are not necessarily the healthiest choices to have a healthy body for long term. And so making those changes today should help you maintain both your health and your wealth for the future.
I love the fact that you and your company brings everything together. It's not just finance. It's about people and the everyday struggles, right? Yep. That we go through. And so that actually opens up my heart, especially, as a entrepreneur myself, right? Yep. And just having like this business model that is not just about the finance part of it. It's not just about taking your money and trying to figure that out. Like it sounds like you and your company actually deep dives into every aspect of someone's life.
We try to. I mean, some people come and they just deal with my money, but we are really looking at life holistically. And I did a talk a couple months ago, and one of the guys at the talk was like, we talked about the health as well. And he was like, I drink soda every day and I eat candy every day. And I eat a lot of meat, and I now have to go on cholesterol and blood pressure. So I said, okay, can you commit to cutting back? So I saw him 3 months later, he's not had any soda.
Oh, see?
So awesome. And he's cut back candy a lot, and he's eating still meat, but he's eating a little less. So I'm like, all right, that's huge. Like, this guy's probably in his 30s. To change those habits now are huge for the rest of his life. So that made me feel really proud.
Oh, I love it so much. It says a lot about you and your husband and your character of really giving back to the community.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love it so much.
A lot of what we're trying to do is help people get a return on their life, not just a return on their money. So we've done so much personal development, to be able to inspire others to do it, I think is really important.
Yes, and that's a great segue to ask my next question, which is, how can we continue to invest in ourselves and our personal development?
Oh my gosh. So I think podcasts are number one on my list. I mean, you can hear from so many people, and you get to do it for free. I mean, you can hear from really famous people, not famous people, but there's so many golden nuggets out there. And so really you can deep dive on any topic through podcasts and YouTube videos and books. That's a wonderful way. I think you find a few people, like your podcast is called, it's Level Up Tribe. You find your tribe and you say, okay, I want to go deep dive with these people. So things like, I've done a bunch of Tony Robbins programs, which was really cool and totally changed my life, opened my eyes to things I never knew about. From there, I went and did some programs with Jack Canfield. I've gone to study with the authors of the 4 Agreements. I've gone to learn Qigong.
That's my favorite book.
Oh, is it? And the Ruiz fathers and sons, they were so amazing. I got the most magical hugs from them. Like they could see in your soul.
I'm so jealous. You saw them in person?
Yes.
Oh.
Yeah, really. And so I keep every year I say, okay, who do I want to go see? Where do I want to learn? I've gone to see Deepak Chopra. I've gone to see famous yoga. I never say her name right. Snatam Kaur. Do you know? She's a chanter and a yoga guru. She's just these magical people. It's been so cool to be around them. And I do some faith-based people too. I think for me, having a strong faith life is really important. And because I think it's 3 legs of the stool, and I think spirituality is one of those legs, and you've got to feed your heart and your soul and your mind. So that's really big. So there's just so many opportunities to do that. Stop the doom scrolling. I gave up TV at least. I think it's pushing on 10 years now. And that is so liberating. When you give up things like that, you have more time for the personal development.
And I love that because your platform really, you do a lot, but your focus is really with women
Yep.
empowerment, working with widows. And
Yep.
so when you work on yourself and your own personal development, spirituality, your mindset, you can give fully and provide that space, these women that are need help.
That's so true. It's
Yeah.
very true. And and if we were all doing that, like I think like your inner light shines. And like I think the world needs that inner light now more than ever. And we need we can do it. It really does start with each one of us.
Yes, I love it so much. So let's talk about your Wednesdays YouTube series. So is that the platform for women only?
No, this is, I mean, it can be for women, but so during the pandemic, I watched like unbelievable fear with people. And I decided to use Facebook, and I started doing Facebook Live. And I would just, when on my walks, I would just say, hey, the wind was pushing against me. And then when I turned around, the wind was at my back, and I realized that was God. He had me. And I was like, okay, there was a pondering with a prayer, a little positivity. And I started to do more of these. And I just picked different topics, things that are usually somewhere in like, I'm either people are mentioning a lot about something, but I do them. They're 1 to 3 minutes. They come out on Wednesday, and they're just a little inspiration. And I've had people say like, I was not going to get out of bed today, and then I saw a couple of your videos, and that you were the reason why I got out of bed. And I was like, oh wow, like really powerful. So it's been over 2 years now that I've been doing them, and I moved it to YouTube, so it wasn't just on my private Facebook page. I have it on my LinkedIn too, and it's been really well received, and it's been wonderful to be able to get positive messages in the world. It's open to anyone to subscribe.
So to go back to WH Cornerstone investment and
Yes.
what your services, you do the financial planning, you do money management.
Yep.
There were two things that stood out to me when I was doing my little investigative research. Curveball life planning and second act retirement coaching. Yes. I know we're kind of limited in time, but can you kind of like briefly tell us about those last two?
Sure. The work we do, Curveball Life Planning, encompasses the work we do with widows, as well as, literally a curveball comes out of nowhere. And how does it affect your life? It could be a layoff. It could be a sudden inheritance, but it's shifting your life, and you need to plan for it. So we are very adept in helping people plan. And the second act, retirement coaching, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's basically helping people when they're getting ready to retire to remember they're retiring to something, and helping them think through what does that mean. So I have a number of assessment tools. We go through the Wheel of Life. We look at where they are, sort of on an emotional, spiritual like assessment. I have a bunch of tools through a Return on Life, and it just helps people get ready for how life is going to be different. So that's a coaching program I offer.
So what's next for you? I feel like there's something just hovering over you that's next.
Yep.
And I can't pinpoint it, but I think it's something big. So what is it?
We are expanding our firm, so that's going to be interesting. We have another new employee starting next week, so that's going to hopefully free up my time to think about some of that next big thing. I've been doing some retreats over the last couple of years for women in transition, and we've had 3 of those, and about 20 people, and they're overnights. So I've got to figure out what those keep looking like. I led my first ever spiritual-based retreat this spring. That was cool. There were 12 women that came to that. And I have a massive goal to do a TED Talk or TEDx Talk. And I want to empower 100,000 women to take action on their financial life. Because I think that women's empowerment, we've got to be an active participant in creating our futures. So I've been slowly working on that, and I'm going to actually publish another journal. This first one was for widows going through grief. This one will be for anyone going through grief.
Thank you. Love it. I'm excited for you, Paula.
Thank you.
I'm super excited. I am glad that we connected. I love the people that come to my podcast. Like, I don't have 1,000 episodes for a reason, because every single person that comes on my podcast just gives something so special and unique. And you're one of those. And so thank you so much for blessing our Level Up Tribes podcast with your knowledge. And it was a lot. So we're going to be doing a lot of rewind.
Okay. Well, thank you for putting your gifts into this world by drawing all this out of your podcast guests. I mean, that's really a huge service, and thank you for being the blessing that you are.
Well, thank you so much. Is there anything else you would like to add or discuss that we didn't touch on today?
So we do have a number of sort of free guides, and we do a newsletter that you can sign up. They're all available on the website. They're popular. So we have a newsletter for widows and one for general public. So they're very popular. It's been going on about 20 years. So
well, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please visit the website at www.leveluptribes.com. And please subscribe to the podcast and share with your family and friends. Be sure to tune in to our next episode. Catch you all next time, my beloved tribes.